I find that as history teachers we do lots of really exciting things at Key Stage 3 and then somehow that kind of gets a bit lost at Key Stage 4. This is an example of something I do as a starter activity and I find it's really useful to hook and engage the children immediately. OK, eyes on me then please, we need to get started. So let's start your 3 minutes now then, out of your seats, let's go. This idea, I call it Find Someone Who, and it involves the pupils walking around the classroom asking other pupils the answers to questions on the sheet, and they record what the pupils say and who's told them.
Who is Steve Biko, an anti-apartheid campaigner?
In this example, I'm using it for apartheid and different types of opposition to apartheid, but I've used it in a range of topics, especially when it's knowledge-based, so if they've got a lot of individuals or groups to remember.
Who began the PAC?
Robert Shabukwe.
It's a timed exercise. I usually give them 3 minutes. It means that all pupils are engaged and can participate, so if they don't know the answers, they can still get the answer from someone else. It's quite difficult to sort of fail in this task. It's sort of exciting starter, I think. It sort of gets them moving, gets them energised. They don't just come in and sort of slump in their chairs thinking, what is Miss going to talk to us about today? They are more likely to be involved. Also, it can be demoralising for some children if they immediately arrive and there's something on the board for them to do that does recap on previous learning, but they don't know it. Whereas this way they can actually get that off someone else and they can feed that back when you do your class feedback. What happened at Sharpeville? I had some really good answers for this. Shh, shh, shh. Yep.
A massacre and 69 people were killed.
Excellent. And who told you that?
Fafa.
OK, well done.
A great way to engage gifted and talented students.
Press conference roleplay.
A lesson I'd like to share with you is my press conference that I do.
Yeah, I'm Nelson Mandela. I'm president of the African National Congress.
I'm Kurt Wildham and I am the Secretary General of the United Nations.
I find press conferences an excellent way of engaging and exciting the students. I'm using it currently for studying the apartheid and international opposition to apartheid in South Africa.
I am Bono, musician and activist.
The way it works is the lesson before the press conference, I ask the students to think about different characters. For homework, I ask my gifted and talented students to research each of those characters. And I ask the remainder of the class to start thinking about ideas, thinking about questions that they think that they'd like to ask those delegates if you were to have a press conference. I want you to think about yourself being a journalist and the newspaper that you are representing. You might want to be a newspaper from South Africa, you might want to be a newspaper from London, you might be one from Mozambique, anywhere in the world.
Hello everyone, I'm ready to take your questions.
On the day of the press conference, the students come into the classroom, I have the delegates around the class and the students then sit round and I give them 4 minutes to ask questions to that particular delegate.
Hello, I'm Tony de Rhodes. I'm a white South African police officer.
Are you racist?
I think it's important that all people are in character, including the students asking the questions, so it's nice for them to think of a newspaper they're representing, and when they're asking the questions, they say, I'm Fred and I'm from the Metro, or whoever it might be.
I'm from the South African Times. Why did you become an activist?
I became an activist because I feel like that what is happening in South Africa is wrong and that we should protest against it to make it right. And if we didn't, then even more people are going to be affected by this, so we should try.
It's important that you set the classroom up right. I like having the delegates sit at tables with maybe 3 or 4 chairs in a semicircle around the table, where the students can then ask questions to each delegate.
What are you going to do to change South Africa?
Well, what I did do to change South Africa was build the ANC, the African National Congress. We helped do the Defiance campaign, which helped boost our numbers of people by 71,000.
OK, time is up. Can we now move to the next group, please? I allow the students 4 minutes to ask the delegates questions, and at the end of that, I'd say time's up. I give them an additional 2 minutes to write down any further points they need to, and then they move from one table to the next.
I'm from the Malawi Independent. Why do you oppose apartheid? In the United Nations name itself, it's all about unity and togetherness. And as you can see, apartheid is definitely not about this. It's about segregation and inequality.
I think this is a really good way of engaging the gifted and talented students because they're becoming the resource in the class. They're actively taking part in the class. I think the students thoroughly enjoy role-playing in Key Stage 4 and 5. Sometimes history teachers forget that.
What are you doing at the moment to oppose apartheid?
At the moment, we impose economic sanctions as well as not allowing South Africa to be in any sporting events.
After a lesson like this, I ask the students to go home and type up their notes. They bring the notes to next lesson and we discuss what they learnt from the delegates. And of course, opposition to apartheid isn't the only time you can use this press conference. You can use it, for example, the Reichstag fire or the Cuban Missile Crisis or many other topics where there is debate about a particular issue.
A great way to teach source analysis.
The learning pyramid.
We often have problems with helping students to understand how to tackle sources, specifically at GCSE level, and what exactly they needed to be doing to help develop their answers with source analysis. To help us with this, we use our learning pyramid.
What we're going to be focusing on today is how the learning pyramid can actually help you in your understanding of source analysis. So we are going to be looking at a source about women in Nazi Germany, and you're going to be using the learning pyramid to help you develop your understanding of how to answer source-based questions.
The learning pyramid is a very simple idea. It's based on Bloom's taxonomy, and it's a pyramid, say, made up of 6 blocks of colour. So it takes them from the very bottom of the pyramid, with remembering and understanding, all the way up to creating an argument with their own knowledge. So instead of using words on their own, by having the image, by having the structure, it's something that can really help develop their understanding.
So if I was to say telling and describing, what do we mean by telling and describing in terms of a source? Michelle?
For telling, you can be summarising what the source is about, and for describing, you can be explaining what happened.
Okay. What do we mean by inference?
Is an inference like when you read the source and then you guess what it could mean, what else it could mean, but it's not there.
Fantastic. We mean that an inference is an educated guess. Any idea for utility? What do we mean by utility?
Words like inference and utility can really be quite confusing to students. So we find with the colours, with having that ladder, it helps give them something to hold on to. It helps give them that structure which they might not be able to manage quite on their own.
Show me which skills you're working on at the moment in here.
We were inferring from the picture on what the women's roles were.
Brilliant.
So we feel that the women's roles back in the Nazi Germany days were that they had no roles in the outside world.
They're trying to give the idea that the whole place is happy, it's like a peaceful place, and then it's all normal.
Have you been inferring?
Yeah.
Yes, you have. Okay, we're going to move to the next one. So evaluating this, looking at its utility. What kind of source do you think this might be?
It could be a propaganda. It could be on a poster to show that, Germany's not a violent place, it's actually a happy place.
So how useful is this source in telling us about women in Nazi Germany?
Not really that useful because it doesn't interpret the full image about women at that time. Okay. It just gives one side of the story.
Not a balance.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
As we've been using the learning pyramid more and more, their essays have become a lot more structured, they've become a lot more detailed, they've become better essays, and their exam answers have improved. Students who are looking for a higher target grade, we can help them identify at what stage of the pyramid they might be stumbling. So specifically, between an A and an A star, are they effectively using their own knowledge to help develop their understanding? Between a C and a D, are they using inferences in their answers, or are they still just describing and quoting the source? We give them ownership of their own learning. They know, by looking at their answers, by colour coding afterwards, what they need to be doing to improve. It certainly helped to help them reflect on their own learning. I found that we can tell them to use inference or utility as often as we want, but it's when they really identify it for themselves that you really start to see progression.
A great way to introduce a subject.
Hula hoop history.
My great lesson idea is using hula hoops. Basically, I do find that when I'm introducing a new topic, it's useful to give people sort of overview of what happens. And that can be quite difficult to do, apart from just conventionally standing by the board and telling them. So this is a really good way to really get to grips with what happens over a long period of time. This is our first lesson on Jews in Nazi Germany, okay? And what we're going to do in order to give you an overview of what life was like under Nazi rule in Germany, we're going to look at the anti-Jewish Nazi laws. I put the pupils into groups. 3 or 4 is quite a nice number, and they make a large Venn diagram. In this example, I'm doing Nazi Germany and the anti-Jewish laws, and we're doing public and private life, but you could extend that and look at adults and children. And so they organise the laws and put them in the right place on the Venn diagram. So if we've got private life and public life, what's the middle section? Both. Good. Excellent.
Jews not allowed to receive eggs or milk.
Both.
How is it both? I think it's private.
Yeah, private.
Because it's not the whole world's going to.
Police and the courts no longer protect Jews.
Public life.
It's an easy lesson to prepare. I simply, on a document in boxes, write out the laws. I then photocopy them onto cards and cut them up. I then give 1 set of the cards per group. And then you simply need 2 hula hoops to make the Venn diagram, and then the pupils organise them themselves.
Jews hand over fur coats and woolen items. That's private life.
Jews forbidden to use public telephones. I think this is public life.
I think it's private.
Public telephones.
I think it's private.
Yeah, it's private because they can't get to their families.
No, you know
can't get to work. It's
because it's
both.
public telephone, so it's both.
Why do I use hula hoops? It's basically to make the Venn diagrams bigger so that pupils are immediately engaged by that. They think it's a bit exciting and different. But also it's to really get the pupils talking to each other. It also means that with some more sensitive subjects, they can have those discussions in smaller groups as opposed to the whole forum of the class. Just as some extension to get you thinking, if you have a look at the laws, they've all got dates on, okay? So arrange them into chronological order and then see if there's anything you notice. Are there any trends? Are things changing? And then begin to kind of think why that may be.
Okay, I always get the dates.
I think the first one was 1933.
1933, yeah.
38. These are 38.
What did we notice?
They decided to make things worse and worse. Schools were closed to Jewish children. They weren't allowed to do basic things that every human should be allowed to do.
It's also really easy to extend the activity, so in following lessons you can give them a sheet to record the laws into their books. I also there and then give them a feedback sheet so they think about which laws have affected them the most, and they sort of come up with an overall statement, so that really consolidates their learning. In this instance, I'm doing the anti-Jewish laws in Nazi Germany, but it can also be used in many topics. For example, the Apartheid and the Jim Crow laws in the Deep South. What's really great about it is, as a teacher, you don't have to work so hard, so you can just circulate the room and just check that everyone's on task and maybe give some extension activities. And really, I just find that the pupils just remember the information so much more when it's from each other, and that's why I would really recommend it.